circular flow of income and demand and supply side shocks. Now, the circular flow of income is a complete model of the economy, and when I was studying A-level economics, which was about 33 years ago, I can remember this appearing and I didn't really get it, and to be quite honest with you, a lot of the time I never even used to teach it, but I think it's pretty good for some things, and I want to show you why I quite like to use it, whereas in the past perhaps I didn't. So up here we have households and firms, and very simply what happens in the circular flow of income, it's a model of the economy, and households offer land, labour and capital to firms, and in return for that households get goods and services back. They pay for those obviously through expenditure, and households are paid incomes by the firms. So it's really showing how money goes around the economy. So households offer land, labour and capital. In return they get income for that. They then spend that income on the firms, and then the firms give them goods and services. What's the other part of the model is that imports, taxation and savings, that is where money will go out of the economy. So every single time, for example, that we buy an import, that money will go to another country, and every time we are taxed, that money goes to the government, and the government will then spend that money, and if we save money, all of that is money going out of the economy. And this is why this model is really, really important, because imagine if, which is what we do for the last 30 years, apart from 1 year, the UK has run a trade deficit. So there's more money here, imports going out the economy, than often money coming in the economy through exports. Now what that means is if you consistently run a trade deficit, so Spain runs a trade deficit of 10% of GDP, Greece runs a trade deficit of in excess of 10% of GDP, and both those economies have really, really suffered. The UK runs a trade deficit of about 3% of GDP, although in the year 2013 we had a record, the year 2013 we had a record trade deficit of 5%. But what that means is, to keep the economy moving, the government has to spend more money than it's receiving, or we have to spend more money, and both of those will lead to debt. And eventually your economy will be caught out if you continuously have a trade deficit. Although in the UK we've been quite lucky, because we are part of Europe and because we have a flexible labour market, because our supply side is also pretty good, foreign direct investment comes into the UK, and in effect that is a good input that comes into our economy and helps to pay for that trade deficit. The other thing I want to show on here is what happens if we have a demand side shock. Now, a demand side shock is where an unexpected event suddenly leads to a fall or rise in demand, but it's normally a fall in demand. So in 2008 we had the credit crunch. What that means is consumption suddenly falls. If we apply this to this model, so people therefore spend less, so therefore the firms are getting less money, so therefore the firms can spend less on employing people, right? And that will affect the whole economy, and you're starting to go on a downward spiral. At the same time, because there was a credit crunch in the UK, there was also a credit crunch in the USA. In fact, it may even have originated in the USA. House prices tanked in the USA, so therefore the UK could sell fewer exports to America. Therefore, there was less money coming into the economy, and through the multiplying accelerator, that could then cause a major recession. So if one of these does drop, like for example exports, then we have to increase government spending, because that's the one thing that the government can really control. A supply side shock, that is when oil prices go up. And actually in 2008 there was a credit crunch, but there was also a massive oil price rise as well. Now when that happens, because oil has an inelastic demand, we're going to be spending more money on imports, because oil is an import, so there'll be more money going out of the economy. So what the circular flow of income shows, which we sort of understand already, naturally, we understand that money will flow around an economy. And the next thing from there is a very small piece of economics, is this model here through the national output, national expenditure and national income are three ways in which we can assess the total value of the UK economy. The output is based upon the flow of goods and services from firms to households. The national expenditure is the expenditure from households to firms, and the national income is from firms to households and shows the amount of income that the households will receive. So we have three ways of assessing gross domestic product or national income, which is the total value of all output in the UK in 1 year.